about a food bank where not only are you hungry, but you're going to stand in a line for a while. When you get to the end of the line, you're going to have to answer a few questions. The guy said, "Are you hungry, Joe?" And Joe said, "Well, yes, sir, yes, I am." The guy said, "When's the last time you ate, Joe?" And Joe said, "I don't quite remember when." The guy said, "What's the worst thing about being hungry, Joe? What's the worst thing about being hungry?" It's just a test. It's just a test. It's just a test. We're just checking this guy out. Is he gonna stand in the lineup? Is he gonna stand in the lineup? What's the worst thing about being hungry, Joe? And Joe said, "Almost worse than the pain in my stomach is knowing that nobody loves me. That nobody loves me. I can live or die, I can live or die, I can live or die, nobody loves me." Scares the hell out of me. Scares the hell out of me. Can't talk no more. Can't talk no more. Can't talk when I cry. Are you hungry, Joe? 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 Are you hungry, Joe?
I think, and the one on the right is.
You're listening to Mecca Normal from their new album. It's the
is
Brave
it
New
called?
Wave Sessions. Do you hear me?
I hear you. Do you hear me?
Yeah. I just turned you up.
Good.
Yeah. So
Always good. Turn me up.
that's the
Get me up there.
that's the voice of Jean Smith of Mecca Normal, and
Barking out orders at Vince.
she's in Vancouver with her partner in crime, David Lester is there.
He's very quiet.
And, this is the funding drive edition of the Kitchen Bang Bang Law here on CKUT 90.3 FM, and we're asking everybody to pledge. The phone number to call if you're someone who uses a phone is 514-907-9424, or if you want to pledge online, just go to our website at ckut.ca. It's easy to navigate. Jean.
Mm-hmm.
So...
Dave just brought me the new album.
New album. You've got the vinyl there now, eh?
I got the vinyl and I got a CD.
Walk me through the story. So, back in 1996, you played a concert at the Cabaret Music Hall downtown in Montreal.
Yeah. Now, is that still there?
No, the Cabaret's not. I mean, the building is, but the Cabaret's long gone. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of figured it was, but what a great little theater.
Yeah, I saw many bands there. I didn't actually see that show there, but I've seen the Mekons there. I saw Stereolab there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Elliott Smith.
For us, it was a headlining show, which now that we're all the way in 2019, that almost seems ridiculous that we would be headlining, but we were in the 90s. And Wooden Stars opened up. Is that Julie Dorian's band, isn't it? Anyway, it was Wooden Stars. Maybe it's not her band. I shouldn't say.
She works with Wooden Stars.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she has done albums with them.
Yeah, so I think she was there. But anyway, we had Peter Jefferies on drums during that time, New Zealander, who he also did his own solo set on these tours. And then he and I had a band, 2 Foot Flame. So 2 Foot Flame actually opened the show, and then Wooden Stars, then the Mecca Normal set. And the thing about it was that when we were contacted to do this album, and back like 5 years ago, and the idea was to get tapes out of the CBC archives from the quintessential Brave New Waves program, which also is no more, but illuminated a lot of interesting music right across Canada as a national radio program from the 80s into, well, it was two or three different hosts, I guess, or even more. But so we'd been on this program because we had been to Montreal a number of times, so we would go down and participate in an interview, and we did some live sessions. So the idea was to get one of these sessions that occurred at the CBC building in Montreal, but we couldn't really find one, or wasn't gelling, and there was many emails and looking, and then Dave found a tape that he had, and lo and behold, it was this fantastic performance that had been recorded by the CBC crew and then aired later on, which, we kind of lost track of when it was aired. We were probably on tour or whatever, but, it was sort of not the focus of our show because we were kind of at the height of our powers, I would say, and feminism was on the tip of my tongue in practically every song. And I would say, too, that, because Peter was also my romantic partner, and we were, I guess, coming to, I don't want to say we were coming towards the end if we weren't, but we did end. And there was a certain amount of tension between he and I, because you're on tour and you're working. He loved Mecca Normal and wanted to meet us, and then I wanted him to be in Mecca Normal, and he's a great drummer, but, then Dave had to, gel with him, and I'd already lived in New Zealand. You did want the whole story, right?
Yeah, I'm listening.
We lived together in New Zealand, Peter and I. That's where we started the other band, 2 Foot Flame. And there was a sense that I might just disappear and live down there, which, Dave was none too pleased that his singer had been scooped. And, now he's the solo act, right? Mecca Normal solo Dave. Anyway, so there was tension there, right? And I think that's one of the main interesting things about this album is those two guys are just like battling it out, and it's funny, it's almost the end of every single song. It's like, who gets the last note? Like Peter splat on the drums, and then Dave goes, meh, and Peter goes splat, splat. I'm going, oh my God, you guys just end this song so we can do the next one?
So you were having to step up and sing louder as well.
Well, I was good and loud there.
Yeah.
They gave me, what I wanted, as people tend to do.
Yeah, like how did you find the difference between Mecca Normal with just Dave and then the Mecca Normal with Peter Jefferies?
Peter really made a huge effort to complement us and be what we wanted him to be. He played in a way that really benefited my personality, my method of singing, and he worked with Dave, and he's a total pro. And he loves Mecca Normal, so he loved Mecca Normal before he met us. So for him, it was a kind of a thrill. But he also has his own career as a solo performer and as different bands he's been in New Zealand. So it was a great great for us. It was very educational to have Peter, in our sphere for several years. I learned so much about recording and about listening in general, and composition that included other instruments, keyboards and drums. So it was a very intense time, and we did have the 3 bands basically to work with. So I was booking tours and mapping them all out, and Dave and I did a lot of the promotion, and Peter was going back and forth to New Zealand, and it was pretty much a very wild time, but one of the highlights of our existence, I would say. And that's what's captured on this album that just popped out of nowhere, really nowhere. We didn't even know it was around. Mm-hmm. And really, if I had one regret in life, it would be that there wasn't a Mecca Normal live album.
That's true, because it's the first one.
And so many people have said, you're so great live, but yet, the studio albums are great, and it's a completely different thing, though, because we ramp it all down, and we're very conscious of the sound dynamic being captured correctly and levels, and the song is going to be how it's supposed to be. Whereas in a live event, it has so much to do with the energy of the audience and the actual performance and the day you're doing it on and how you're personally feeling and the relationship between the musicians and in the throes of whatever has to happen. Mm-hmm. But we were, always known as a really good live band, so this is a great document. So we're totally thrilled.
And let's pan back a little bit in cinematic terms. So at the time, you guys were signed to Matador in '96?
That's right, yeah.
And 2 Foot Flame was on Matador as well.
That's right? Which was
had you released anything in '96 with 2 Foot Flame?
Yeah, our first album would have been out, and in fact, maybe our only other one, the second one. I'm not clear on the dates there, but we did the 2, and Michael Morley was on both of those. But Peter and I toured as a duo, where he played keyboards and drums simultaneously, and I played guitar and sang. And we did that after we'd broken up, if you can. And so a lot of silence in the car.
Oh dear!
Went Austin to Boston with that configuration.
And Peter was also signed to, I don't know what label, but he was on a label at that time, like Ajax or something.
Yeah, he was on Ajax, and now he's been most recently getting, I'm not sure the label, but he's doing a lot of reissues of those albums and other albums, Nocturnal Projections, I think. Mm-hmm. So, and his great album, Last Great Challenge in a Dull World, the quintessential Peter Jefferies album,
because it's been
re-released, I guess.
It seemed like such a great time for indie music in terms of,
my goodness,
having incredible labels, like signing bands like Mecca Normal and giving you the ability to tour and to make some kind of a living at your work.
Well, they didn't give us the ability to tour. We toured a lot.
So you had to throw your own tours together.
Oh, we've always been DIY booking our tours. We do we do a ton of promo ourselves. They run ads, but I don't recall them. I don't think they offered a little bit of tour support here and there if necessary, and there were advances, that's for sure, that they hoped to recoup on sales. Mm-hmm. And that was always good because, we were getting big checks back in those days that were just they'd be unheard of now, I think.
Wow.
But, we've always booked our own tours, and I do all the driving and run, keep the cars on the road. So that's always exciting.
Does David not, he doesn't
David doesn't speak, and he doesn't drive.
He doesn't have a license.
Well, I'm sure he's got a license, but I'm the more proficient driver.
Okay.
I like to be driving. I'm a controlling type person.
Yeah.
Hello. I enjoy driving, and he doesn't. Let's put it that way. So he does a lot of he gets all the maps together. We don't actually tour with GPS and cell phones. We're old school. We get a map and a flashlight. Headlamp.
And you have toured quite fairly recently. You toured a little bit on the West Coast there.
I wouldn't call that recently.
Well,
with
few
Bikini
years
Kill.
Oh, you played with Bikini Kill.
Well, no, I like the way that sounds.
Or not Bikini Kill, I'm sorry.
Yeah, the
Julie Ruin.
That was fantastic. Yeah, we did Vancouver, Seattle, and Portland. And throughout the whole tour, there was a talk of us being taken down the full West Coast tour. Because we kind of, made a bit of an impact, let's say, with the show. We were on fire.
Wow.
And so Kenny Melman, the keyboard player, and Kathleen, they loved Mecca Normal back in the day, and we were very meaningful to how they proceeded, or meaningful, I don't know about the very, but, we were an influence and an inspiration to the origins of Bikini Kill and some of the other Riot Girl bands, as there were many influences that we shared even. The bands coming out of England prior to us, Raincoats, the Slits.
Sure, and you were, you were...
Au Pairs, X-Ray Specs, those kind of bands. But, because we have been cited in print as an inspiration to Kathleen personally, we run with that because Mecca Normal actually started to change the world. There were not enough women in bands in Vancouver in the mid-'80s, and I was encouraging women to start bands, get together with their friends, rather than being in the audience, to write lyrics about things that were happening to them, their experiences, their sense of reality as women in society and within rock culture. And this is what we took to Olympia, where a lot of the Riot Girl co-founders were at that point. They were going to the Evergreen State College there. They're about 10 years younger than we are. But they would have seen our first show and many shows subsequent because our label was there.
Right.
K Records.
K Records.
So getting back to the sense of, we were very direct. My lyrics are very direct. The one song that is maybe referred to as our anthem is I Walk Alone.
Right.
The city is my home. I walk alone. I'm not alone in my home. And then I tend to take a wander through the audience and sing this directly into people's horrified faces for a while. And that cut's actually on the album. And then I come back to the mic and very forcefully say that it's my right to wear whatever city I'm in at whatever time of day. And that's a direct message. That's not a band writing a pop song that they hope people will like and that they will make money from. The intention is to change the world, is to inspire people, to show people that bands can be political, that women can be on stage and say important things, something that's relevant to their existence and their safety and their confidence, and a demand for change. And that's why when I do interviews, I like doing interviews. And we've often, sometimes wonder if we have a band just so we can do interviews and encourage people to create to this very day, to utilize more grassroots structures to make things happen. And these times are as daunting, maybe even more daunting than they were in the 80s when we felt that things were not good enough. They were bad.
They were a nightmare.
Yeah, and now it seems like with the internet, all it's done is really open up just how bad it is still. Like the level of street harassment that I've read commentary on various websites. I'm mortified that this has not been resolved.
Yeah, it drives me crazy.
Even worse. What was the question?
Well, I got a couple of questions now. I keep thinking of more questions as you're talking. But my first question was, can you describe your first live show with David and how that came about?
Well, Dave's brother was the manager of DOA, Ken Lester, and he kind of was creating a politicized sensibility, or working with their political nature, DOA, quintessential hardcore band from Vancouver. Very political. Four guys on stage, typically, which is something that we reacted to. The four guys on stage thing was kind of a drag, right? But yet, I was very inspired by DOA's politics, which in part were championed by Dave's brother Ken. Mm-hmm. And Ken is a poet. In fact, when we did the first Black Wedge tour in '86 with our first album that we put out, Dave and I, on our own label, Ken was on that tour. He organized that, and DOA loaned us their big school bus to do that tour. Mm. But our first tour was opening for DOA at the Smiling Buddha, which is on East Hastings, and what had recently at that time been the Seminole Punk Club in Vancouver. Club, it was a dive bar. So you had the kind of the first generation of young, very young people, mostly starting these bands, Subhumans, what have you, and then it all seemed like the scene was over. By the time we played there in 1984, I think was our first show, opening for DOA.
What was that like? Like
it was bizarre. There was
the audience must have been gobsmacked.
Yeah, they're like, "What the? Can we swear on CKUT?"
Yeah, well, it does happen.
I tend to swear a lot. I haven't so far. I'm aware of that, but yeah, they didn't like what we were doing. They didn't like being screeched at by this woman and no drums and no bass and but it was radical and
it was radical. Yeah.
And they didn't turn the lights on for us, right? So we're on stage doing our set and they're just talking and drinking beer, and I can see the whole thing as I talk about it. I can see what was there.
Wow.
And also my ex-husband was there he took some very good photos, so we documented that.
Oh, that's great.
And, yeah, that was great. He was a guy very nice guy. Well, we won't go into him, but anyway.
But he was nice.
I'll tell you all about him. No, never mind. And why we broke up. Well, that's kind of interesting because I wanted to start a punk band. That's why we broke up. He thought that was kind of foolish.
Yeah, I just wanted to get...
Okay, so there we are on stage. We get through the set. We step off stage, and this guy rushes over. He's glowing. He's gleaming. And he's saying, "I'm an L.A. producer. I'm a record producer. You guys are going to go far. You're going to be huge." And we're looking at this guy going, "What is this guy? Who is this guy?" Like he's cornering us against the wall. Like he's just animated. And nobody else spoke to us for the rest of the night, probably.
Wow.
And, well, I mean, we're still fairly independent from, we didn't get what we wanted from the scene, and opportunities came up to go to Montreal really quickly. Like as soon as we had our album out, we went to Montreal. Mm-hmm. Norman Naraki set up shows for us there. We played at Café Commune. Yeah,
Norman was super, super active.
Yeah, and because he was in the duo with Sylvain Cote, Rhythm Activism. Right. Great duo, totally political. There was this incredible... intensity of commitment and a laser focus on current events from their side, and I was covering feminism and other social issues, poverty with Are You Hungry, Joe, housing issues. We kind of had similar terrain, but yet different. But, these two duos with two fantastic guitar players, and then the very important element of clear, direct, profound words in both bands. So we connected and did a couple of shows out there, and that's where we came into. In fact, it was the basement of the CBC building the first time we did Brave New Waves, where we conjured up the idea of doing the West Coast tour, and we called this the Black Wedge, because in the CBC building they were talking about the Red Wedge coming up next, the Red Wedge, with Billy Bragg and the guy from Style Council, was it? Yeah. So they had like a socialist situation going on to support the Labour Party in Britain. Yeah. And they were touring around. I'd probably doing, shows that were low price, whatever. It was kind of radical for
trying to counter the Reagan, Mulroney, Thatcher wave of
perfect. Thank you, Vince.
The conservative stuff.
Exactly. So we thought, well, we'll be the anarchist Black Wedge. Right. And I think we made a call from Montreal during that first very exciting time and contacted Ken, and we were talking about the bus, and it all came together. By that summer, that was spring, we were out there. We were up there. Norman titled our mini tour Spring Uprising. And by summer, we were Vancouver to L.A.
That's amazing, because you're doing all this, and there's no internet. There's
it's hard. Isn't it weird to think back? Like, how do we make this stuff happen?
There's no smartphones. There wasn't even fax machines, right?
No.
So, it's an amazing thing that you're able, and also, of course, budget-wise, would have been budget zero, right? Like, nobody had any money. So,
I'm very good at saving money, and I've always tended to, I've been afloat all these years, paid my own rent every month. I'm now almost 60, and that's a thing. I've been on EI and welfare periodically, but as far as managing a band, a very unlikely band of two people that are dealing with primarily foisting political sensibility from the stage at top volume, it's pretty amazing what we've been able to do, and all the people that we've met, and we've made money at our shows. Not big money, but we mostly break even on our tours. Mm-hmm. I think we've only had a couple of tours where we didn't break even. And, we would just phone around. We'd get, numbers from people of the clubs we should go to, and people would help. There was a really strong network.
But
you'd mail somebody a cassette and a press kit, Xerox some stuff up, and they'd get the details and put it in a newspaper ad, and off you'd go. And then once you had your clubs that you would play, there'd be maybe 3 or 4 in a city, and you just have to kind of call around and see who, on the night that you were going to be in town, could you get on that bill? Did it make any sense to play with these other people? And because we were sometimes the poetry thing on a loud bill, and other times we'd be the loud thing on a poetry bill, or we'd be the threatening feminist band on an aggressive hardcore bill. Right. So we tended to mix it up in a lot of different ways. Like we weren't always just looking for like-minded people to play with. We were trying to, create a scene, man.
And that's that. I mean, now people probably take that all for granted, but apparently now, people can't get over the American border anymore because of new paperwork problems and stuff. I don't know if you've encountered that.
I just haven't been. I have no inclination right now. I'm painting all the time, as you know, on Facebook. Yeah. You see it.
We'll get to that later.
Yeah, but that's sort of what's different about Mecca Normal still being around is that, we never stopped doing this. We've taken breaks to do other things, and I've lived other places, and Dave has a partner, and they have a band together, and they do other things and travel. Mm-hmm. And but yet Mecca Normal is always ready to, because we're always in touch, and we're always talking about ideas, and it just brings us. It just keeps bringing us along into the present all the time. It's quite interesting now that we're this far along from 1984 or whatever up to present date, that we're ready to do great shows. And in many ways, I feel like my voice is better than ever, and we're more focused. I quit drinking in 2000, mm-hmm. and we haven't toured that much since then, but it does add a different way of being on stage that's less, chaotic, let's say.
Right.
And I had to really work into that. And that was right at the time where people stopped going to live shows. The internet was just coming up, and there was this sort of disastrous time for musicians where no one was really going to shows as much because the internet was so fascinating, and people were downloading music, and record sales went flat, and that affected everybody.
Right.
And while it's doing that, you as an individual band or people, you kind of feel it's just you, like your own personal trajectory in music has just bottomed out, and that's depressing, right?
Right, but it's actually part of a demographic change.
Absolutely, but we didn't really realize that because the internet was still collecting data on the bottoming out of the whole thing. It was in place. It was happening. But that's the point where I went back to, getting part-time jobs here in Vancouver and writing novels for about 10 years.
Okay. I'm going to play another track from the Brave New Waves recording.
Why don't we put Dave on after this track?
Sure.
And I'm going to actually jump on the other phone so I'll be able to hear and maybe chime in a little bit.
Sure thing. Just so we'll be back after this.
energized with Kar Maha, Montreal's feminist women's choir, directed by Megan Batty. We're flexing our rebellious voices in 2 evenings of music, dancing, and camaraderie on May 9th and 10th at La Sala Rosa, 4848 Saint-Laurent. Renewal, resistance, rebelle, change-moi ça. Show at 8 p.m., tickets at the door or online at brownpapertickets.com. This is a co-production with CKUT.
CKUT, 30 years.
Gal, what do you think radio is going to look like in 30 years?
Obsolete silence.
Sorry, say that again?
Obsolete silence.
Sorry, what was that?
Obsolete silence.
Stood.
I think radio is a fairly stable technology that's quite reliable, and so I don't think it will change very much, but I think we will change. So perhaps the content of radio will be vastly different, but the technology of radio will be the same.
So you just got really philosophical about it?
Well, sometimes that happens.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Johnny, what do you think radio is going to be like in 30 years?
I don't think it'll exist in 30 years. I think it's dying technology.
Same as Gal. All right. Thanks, everybody.
CKUT 90.3 FM.
L'équipe de l'émission Café organise une soirée festive pour la campagne de financement annuel de CKUT. Johnny Void, Claude Lantrop, Esther B, Lésion, Diletta et VJ Angaz.
On April 30th from 8 to 3, the team from Café are hosting a party for the annual CKUT funding drive with an eclectic lineup of live acts and DJs. See you at Blue Dog Motel, mardi le 30 avril dès 20h. 3958 Boulevard Saint-Laurent, $5, pay what you can.
You're tuned to CKUT 90.3 FM. Of course, this is the funding drive edition of the show, and so don't forget to dial 514-907-9424 if you're interested in making a pledge to this show or any show. It's up to you. And you can also go to our website. It's easy to pledge on the website, ckut.ca. And I'm on the air, I think I'm on the air with David Lester right now.
You are indeed. I've been.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure you were still hanging on at the other end of the line in Vancouver.
Yes,
and,
we're both here, yeah.
I have to thank you both for going through the effort of doing it for my last show ever on CKUT.
I know. Congratulations on what you've accomplished by having your show all these years.
Bazillions of years.
Yeah.
It's all a blur.
It's impressive stamina. So.
Well, there's a reward too. I mean, I could say the same thing about being in a band. It's like, wow, that must be really grueling. But actually, radio is as rewarding as any other sort of creative, semi-creative project.
But wait, haven't you been there every Tuesday since about 1997?
Well, yeah, since
ridiculous.
Since 95.
That's great, Vince.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And also, it's pretty interesting that I could have a day show for that long, rather than like having to have a day job, right? So that's
wow.
That's an added plus to the Montreal vibe, which. I have to point out to people who are like sitting in, I don't know where, in Victoria, BC, going, oh, they have such a great scene, we have to move to Montreal. But it's like, we're under assault here by the condoizing forces that are like completely transforming the rest of North America. It's a bit slower here, but it's the same scene everywhere. So just the war is everywhere, as they say.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we face the same problems here in terms of the house prices, and so the community where when we started out, it was not that way. Artists, utilized the city and lived in the city, and the options for where you could live and work and how you could survive as an artist were very completely different now. So now it is it's just not that. I don't know how an underground scene comes out of a situation like we have right now.
Yeah, where you're having this red hot, sort of like endlessly red hot, weird real estate thing where rents are shooting through the roof and everything, and it's like a party for the rich people, nonstop. It's sort of disgusting, actually.
Well, absolutely, and we're seeing now that people who, if you want to pursue the arts, you have to move to another community. You have to find a smaller community and start again, really. So this is the transformation that's occurring right now, which was very different than when Mecca Normal started about 35 years ago.
I'm just curious, how are your feelings about the Brave New Waves release?
Well, I'm totally thrilled because, like Gene said earlier, we've never been able to capture the sense of aliveness to our performance on record, because when you're recording, you've got headphones on, you've got chords everywhere. You are really serious about, okay, this is how the song goes, and this is where you end, and this is be quiet before you start, and make sure you're quiet at the end of it, and there's a whole bunch of concerns around that, and it can make for a relatively, at times, a stiff performance. You just don't get that raggedness, that punk rock sensibility, which I feel is totally encapsulated on this recording that we've just put out. And Jean is on fire. Jean is spectacular. Her vocals, her improvisations, it's all captured here on this record. And so that's why I'm like, it's probably the most exciting record that I think, I've been a part of with Mecca Normal, and I'm so happy that it's out, and that we've actually captured the sense of a live Mecca Normal show.
And you didn't really realize you had the tape. You sort of went back into the archives and discovered that you had a copy of it.
Well, we were, when Artifact contacted us, they couldn't find this this recording that we knew existed. They said it just wasn't there in the CPC archives, and so, I have hundreds and hundreds of cassettes, and Gene has a whole ton here, and we were looking through all these cassettes, and I knew I had a cassette of this somewhere, of this show, and it was only broadcast once on Brave New Waves, and so I spent days looking for the cassettes, and it was not until the very last box. I remember Jean having a conversation with Jean where she sort of said, "Oh, let's just say, you can't find it, and that's it, right?" I said, "No, give me one more night, and I'll do one more look through." And it was the very last box, and I couldn't believe it when I saw it, and it said Brave New Waves, 1996, I think it is, and
yeah, it was April '96.
Yeah, and there was one, and I was like, oh my God, and it was all handwritten. I don't know whose handwriting it was. And then I found a second cassette, and it was like, oh my God, this is it. And so, I took one of them and I put it into my cassette player, which I shouldn't have done in a way, because this thing has been sitting there for 23 years, and who knows what kind of ratty conditions it's in. And then you put it in a cassette. But I played like 30 seconds of it, and I thought, oh my God, it sounds great. And I quickly took it out and sent an email to Gene, and that's how it came about. And the fact that it was we saved it. This is probably the only one that's there.
I was just going to interject and say I wasn't going to even use the word cassette. You said it about 5 times because it makes it seem like it could be of a lower quality. But now I have the opportunity to talk a bit about it is not. It's been mastered to a very high level. It's been, carefully gone over, and it's a fantastic recording. It's a tremendous recording. I think a review said recently. And also, it is evidently, this is a series, by the way, I want to mention, the Brave New Waves
Oh, yeah,
series.
yeah, sure. Yeah.
This is, I think, number 17.
Yeah, they put out...
Cobb is out, a bunch of different bands. So when you go to if you did go to the Bandcamp page, you can see all the other releases prior to it. But we got word recently that it was selling better than the other ones in the series, which is fun. But also, I think that is probably because we're active on social media and we're still together as a band.
Right,
Whereas, a lot of these other people are not promoting their album that came out because they're many years later and doing other things and whatever. For us, for the reasons that Dave just talked about, it being I think he called it the best punk rock album ever made, just between you and I. Just paraphrasing Dave there. But, so I just wanted to interject that, I wouldn't have used the word cassette because it sounds like, what? You can make an album of a cassette. But now we get to talk about, what's possible in the digital world of transferring it over and meticulously, making it a tremendous recording. I also wanted to say on Bandcamp, it got put in a category on their front page or something of best punk of April. Got a nice little write-up on Bandcamp. So that, it's getting some reviews and some...
No, Bandcamp Online is, they're doing some really good promo work like that, where
they did a great article, actually, about Brave New Waves some time ago. I've posted a couple of times on the Mecca Normal Facebook page with a photograph of Brent, one of the Brent Band, with the original, I think he was the second host, definitely the person we interacted with most as the host.
Mm.
And just talking about the importance, and also one of the members of CUB kind of summed it up by saying there was no internet, and having a late night, many hours long radio program, a national radio program that also leaked down into the northern states too. So some of our friends down, in Bellingham and other cities, Detroit, would know about Brave New Waves. But it was a time where you were not hearing this music anywhere. You couldn't get on the internet, or it was a great discovery, and the dialogue or monologue between the songs with information about where these people came from, what the album was called. You went and then went to your record store and looked for it. This was the method of getting new music into your life. Was a very important role that they played.
Yeah, I'm sure it really helped grow the scene.
And this is radio. What we're talking about now is as a method, and a great station like CKUT, long-standing, dealing with social justice issues, community issues, and right now in the middle of your funding drive. So, we do hope that people pick up the phone or otherwise make a donation to support radio in general, and specifically your show. And when in days gone by, we drive across the country, or any old country, to get to radio stations. That's where we first get to a town, or it's usually at a university, so maybe they're on the outskirts of town. That's where we go first. We go to radio so we can talk to people, can play some political music, and then get people to the show. Those are secondary, promoting the album and the show. It's mostly a great egalitarian way to communicate amongst themselves, even though, it's us right now on the radio, but we're just regular people. We're civilians in a lot of ways, and we know that we share values with the people who are listening, and we hope to energize people and inspire people still to this day.
It's a different emphasis than the sort of the commercial circuit, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So, David, I'm wondering if we should talk more about Mecca Normal, or if we should start talking about other projects. What do you feel like?
Well, we can talk about Mecca Normal if you have any more questions on that one. So.
Well, last time I talked to you guys, it was almost 5 years ago. Actually, the last time I had. I'm sorry. Last time I talked to Gene on a funding drive was about 5 years ago, and then I talked to you a couple of years later about some of your projects. What else can we say about Mecca Normal? You had an album out in 2014.
Yes, we had one called Empathy for the Evil, where we worked with the producer Kramer, who also contributed backing tracks to some of the some of the pieces. And so it was a great experience to fly to Florida and meet him and work on the album in a similar way to what we have done, but also we were very efficient, and he basically just let us do what we wanted to do and tried to facilitate that to make make another great album. So that worked out as an experience to do. So, and his contributions were excellent.
And you toured for that as well that year.
Yes, we did. We did do a tour. Yeah,
with Gene driving.
So we did part of the West Coast, and then we went to the northeastern U.S. And at the end portion of that tour, we were on Democracy Now.
Yeah, that's a great clip.
And that was related to having some of our artwork in a portion of the Whitney Biennial, and that was to do with a single that we had out, which included the song Malachi, about the American war protester who lit himself on fire in protest. And it was a person that we knew in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And so the song was about him, and he had hoped that his tape that he made of his dramatic death and his statement about why he was doing it would be widely distributed and make an impact in the name of peace and anti-war ideas. And his he did not want to live in a country or live at all, with the U.S. in the way that they handled their military. And the tape did not get out. His family did not want it to be seen by the media or anywhere, really. So in discussing all this, I came up with the song, the lyrics about Malachi, and as we practiced it, and it became obvious that we were using art to further his message in
mm-hmm.
so many ways that has been done before, to use whether it's visual art or poetry or music to further the scope and range of an idea that was not given proper due, really. So anyhow, my cover art was in the Whitney Biennial, and also a great poster Dave did of Malachi were included in this incredible top museum exhibit. And because the War and Peace report with Amy Goodman, is about war, and we had a connection and pushed a producer, and in the last minute we got a call to come down to somewhere in the Lower East Side, I think, or anyway, in Manhattan. We were just on our way to do our last show in Philadelphia, and we went up and we met Amy and did a segment with her. It was all kind of surreal. And then we did about, I think, 3 or 4 songs, and they really thought, you can't play live. We don't have the right mics. I'm like, no problem. We do this all the time. Whatever mic you have will be just fine. Just everybody realize, no, you'll have to not do it because we won't be able to hear, and you won't have the. They were all hepped up. It was really.
Oh yeah. Yeah. The newsies. The newsies.
We're not going to not play. We're. So anyway.
No, that's brilliant.
So that was
that's
fantastic to be. It's fantastic in ways that are unique to our vision of how we use Mecca Normal to wedge ourselves into the consciousness of people who might otherwise not know about us, but in terms of it being radical behavior, not not to sell records to become famous. That's never been our thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to clarify.
I was just thinking about Malachi, and there was another activist whose name I don't remember off the top of my head, but he did a similar self-immolation last year around the issues of climate change in the States. And I'm wondering if you want to talk a bit about general despair, especially in the American scene right now, because, it's bad enough here, but in the States it's like way worse. And how does that impact on your day-to-day creative life?
Well, because we have a lot of allies and fans, we'll call them, and actual friends. You know, when we tour, we tend to stay with people all these years, and we stay with very interesting people who see the value in what we do, and we have great conversations with them, and they're just great people. They're great Americans. And so, you know, we have a lot of ties down the West Coast and in the Northeast, and then there'll be people who heard us, you know, and it changed their life in some way, and they want to get in touch with us to let us know that. So we see a very positive side. In fact, you know, my Facebook page is just crammed full of fantastically interesting people who are mobilizing on all fronts and reacting in a reasonable way. So, you know, I don't read, you know, I don't take in as much because I sell my paintings on Facebook. I'm just there a lot, and I'm just in this environment that is inspired and hopeful and philosophical and angry. Mm-hmm. So it's my own community of our long-term making, really. So, you know, I mean, I guess there must be a sense of hope coming back that this is all, you know, it's going to come to an end one way or the other with their presidency. And a lot of things have probably been set in motion and intensified as far as the direction. You know, people are talking about the end of capitalism quite openly now, whereas they weren't before.
Yeah, in mainstream, like that's the in mainstream publications in the States, which is it's considered like coming out of nowhere, you know, because Americans are so oblivious to this stuff.
Yeah. So in a way, it's, you know, it's radicalized a whole lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so I will speak to that rather than to the despair.
Yeah, I agree.
Goes without saying.
Yeah.
And it will go without saying here.
David, maybe you could talk a bit, David, about your the graphic work you do, because a lot of that is very pointedly political.
Yeah, it's very specific, very based in history, and the current book that I have out right now is called 1919: A Graphic History of the Winnipeg General Strike. And it was written by the Graphic History Collective, a group of academics and artists who've gotten together to tell history, progressive history, using popular means such as posters and graphic novels. And so they wrote the script to the 1919 book, and I illustrated it in a record time of 93 pages in 53 days. Yeah. Now, normally a person would take about 2 years to draw a book like that, but there was a deadline that I don't know where this deadline came from, but it was a deadline, and I worked 10, 12 hours a day, and it was a time where there was it was a very hot summer in Vancouver.
Yeah,
and
you were working through a heat wave.
Yeah, heat wave, and smoke advisories from the city to close your windows, and so the conditions were kind of, you know, tough to maintain this pace, but I did, and now the book is just out, and so there's a big conference happening in Winnipeg next week that I'll be at.
That's excellent.
Celebrating the 100th anniversary of the strike and assessing its significance and importance to Canada and to labor history worldwide.
What do you think of the general strikes for the environment that are being organized by students? Basically, they're inspired by Greta Thunberg. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I think it's remarkable, and that's really what the theme of the book is, or the whole point of the book is. The book is really, it's not just a history book. It's really the book's existence is a form of activism in itself, and it's trying to encourage people to use the general strike as a means of social change, which is what it's always been used for. But in this case, we can apply it to issues like climate change, and the book is also meant to illustrate the importance of working together and the importance of solidarity. Now, many people can work individually and do great work, but if you want to transform society in a profound way. You often need to work with others, and you need that kind of solidarity, which we saw in the Winnipeg General Strike, where you saw unionized workers and non-unionized, skilled and unskilled, male and female, all working together in a general strike situation. And that is where you can see that profound change might take place.
I just want to add here that Dave's illustrations are unbelievable, absolutely world-class in this book.
Well,
I was just bowled over. He also invented some great techniques that were probably due to the deadline he was under. So he has some very loose pieces that just are super powerful. And he had an exhibition in, I guess, the end of last year of some of the pieces. It was great to see them up on a gallery wall. Mm. But he's, I've obviously looked very closely at the work that he's doing. He did The Listener a number of years ago, which was about a public artist who became disillusioned and went to Europe and bumped into some people who had regrets about not becoming more active, again, very specifically. Right. So we learn about Hitler and how public art works, and again, the positive message of, how people work together. And then subsequent things that he's done, a piece on the Ballantine Pier, the Battle of Ballantine Pier, another labor piece where he challenged himself to do this very short term, which probably contributed to his ability and confidence to do the Winnipeg General Strike book in such short order. But he did this masterful interpretation through his own eyes of a strike a battle on the waterfront here in Vancouver that his grandfather was involved in. And I was just blown away by this. And oftentimes, we compete with each other. So it's like, oh God, Dave's showing me this. I think at the same pizza lunch we had, I said, well, here's my manuscript to my next novel. I was like, and I raise you one novel. And anyway, just sort of a fun aside of how we do as a creative partnership, challenge each other, support each other in emotional terms, as far as every level really of life. And that's when Dave talks about people working together. It can even be small groups. Yeah. And the value of a creative partnership. I don't know how people maintain an edge and the motivation when they're isolated, and it's so easy to derail and just forget about it. Whereas I always feel I have an obligation to create top-notch work because I don't want to let Dave down. So there's that part of our partnership. But I kind of interrupted there to say that Dave's work is just spectacular, and I believe he's just completely, and I know a lot about art, and I think he's just right up there, world class at this point. So I'm really excited to see what he does next, which is the Emma Goldman graphic novel. If we can ever stop getting these other important jobs that he's got, the long-term, the story of Emma Goldman living in Toronto during her final days. That's the ongoing project that he'll tell you more about.
Well, the scenes of the battle scenes in the Winnipeg General Strike book are great, and you wrote a little bit about how you did those scenes. Could you talk a bit about that?
Well, the Graphic History Collective wanted me to make a connection between the soldiers who went to war in World War I and the violence that they faced during that war, and then they come home to Winnipeg, and the connection to the brutality they faced as civilians, as citizens, by their own government. And so I drew a whole section, which is about a third of the book, which is called Black Saturday, that particular day where the police attacked the workers. And I drew it as if I were a war artist, and that was my approach, to do it really rough and fast, and have the sense of energy that you're actually on the street and you're scribbling down and you're in your sketchbook what you see. And I wanted that vitality rather than the carefully planned panels that I do in the rest of the book. And I wanted that looseness. I wanted, mistakes to be in there. And in many ways, it's very much like playing punk rock guitar. It's about the energy and the sense of movement and the sense of texture and the tactile quality of the drawings, just as it is with the music, which I think on this live album that we've just done, I think there is a tactile quality to it, which you don't often say about music. But in this case, it is what compelled this section of the book, and I realized I needed to approach the attack on workers in a very different way. It can't be sanitized. It's got to have that sense of, this is a terrible, tragic moment, and you have to depict it with, in a way, tragic. A tragic approach to how you draw it.
I was actually listening to the new album, the Brave New Waves recording, while I was reading your graphic novel, the history of the Winnipeg General Strike last night. So there was definitely a meshing going on there, definitely a synergy.
Yeah, well, that's
between
great.
the music and the art.
Well, I think this is the thing I love about our Mecca Normal songs is I think they transcend time and fashion, and we could have done it 100 years ago. We could have played Mecca Normal, could have played it during the Winnipeg General Strike, and it would have seemed relevant. It would have seemed significant content-wise to what was going on there and what people were trying to do to transform their lives. And so that's one thing I've always been happy about working with Gene is again, there's the friendship and there's a camaraderie of being two artists working together and sharing a project like Mecca Normal and all the other projects that we do and how we work doing any aspect of our lives. There's a connection there. And I also wanted to talk briefly about the importance of community. And again, this goes into the Winnipeg General Strike and the solidarity and the sense of community there, is that for Gene and I mean, community gives a context to the work that you make. It is not just like, oh, we make great songs and it's product and we're pushing product out there to the world. No, with us it was, meeting Calvin at K Records and being part of the Pacific Northwest music scene and that sense of community there. And we've met different people along the way who've had their own communities that we've been able to be a part of. And it really propels you as an artist, and it gives you great hope in the power of art to transform society. And also, it's given a great energy to Gene and I in the work that we do, that there is a way to present our work. There is a context that it exists in, and it is not just isolated a moment in time. And also, because you have that context, you have that history, you are able to then transcend the decades, and that becomes part of your long-term history, and you can't really escape it. But that's a good thing because you have a sense of being propelled along by it.
Where's this going? I'm on the edge of my chair. What's going to happen next?
So anyway, Jean is, I just want to say she's a fantastic person to work with. We just have these conversations where, it's really stimulating and exciting to talk about art. And, even after 35 years or so, it's still as exciting as it was the day we first got together to play music.
Yay.
Awesome.
I was going to add to that and think, we just sort of fluked into this community in Olympia, and then you just end up in that sphere. I went down there a lot on my own and hung out, and we recorded albums there, and we toured with those people. We could as easily found people in Vancouver. It just happened that we didn't. So now it's kind of like we're not part of a scene or a community so much here, which actually now that we both work a lot. Like Dave is a real icon of discipline, and then I'm painting every day and packaging and on Facebook putting things under people's noses, and that's all a type of community too. But as as I realized that I've lived here my whole life in Vancouver, my parents are from here, and we've seen a million shows, I do feel like I don't have that sense of community as much in Vancouver, which I'm certainly open to. Like, we're not anti-Vancouver, or if there was something going on, I'm available to participate in some fashion, which also includes this idea that I've been working on for the last number of years about the free artist residency, which I intend to purchase some type of facility, a building or a house, and open a artist residency where people working in, could be any discipline really, film, music, visual art, writing, can take time out of their otherwise chaotic lives and come and stay and work on a project that intends to change the world. And it will be free, and that's what I want to do, and have it be left to properly legally bequeathed to a social justice activist type group that place will then be used for a similar purpose. So it's a way of trying to beat the whole real estate domination by wealthy people in this idea. Like, I don't actually believe in the ownership of property or money per se anyway.
Yeah.
But because I'm now officially making too much money, more money than I need to pay my expenses here in Vancouver. I just happen to have very low rent. The rent has never gone up here in 25 years. But my building is for sale,
right?
Which this situation that's defined my creative freedom and having, for the last 3 years been painting, and that's been my only income. Phenomenal to have this happen at the stage of life that I'm at. But I am making more than I need. Like, I sold 30 paintings this month. And they're $100 U.S. paintings, 11 by 13 that I post on Facebook, my regular page, as soon as they're dry, right? Mm-hmm. And I do talk about how much when I get over my expenses of $1,000 U.S., I just use U.S. as a standard configuration of the dollar. I keep a tally of how much has been raised for the artist residency. Mm-hmm. And as Dave mentioned earlier, we are finding people who are, having to move out into other communities or figure out where they're going to go. So it's like a dispersing of our allies out. Some people going over to the Gulf Islands, other people going to other provinces. It's sort of a sense of mayhem at a point where you want stability after all the years you put into culture, alternative culture, social justice relationships, that work has been done with people that you engage with, and now we're all being sort of willy-nilly dispersed.
Yeah, that happened here too with the plateau, because it's been completely gentrified, and so the whole scene that formed in the 80s and 90s has been pushed to the margins of the city. And
and especially for people like us, like, we don't no kids, no actual jobs that we have to be tethered to. We still have a lot of life in us as far as potential to pass down information, to be part. It's not the stereotypical, they're old, they got grandchildren, or they got their pension or whatever. I ain't got no pension.
Right.
I'm ready to start another. In fact, my buddy Dwayne, who I play guitar with, we have a 2 acoustic guitar, long time group of songs, very beautiful music. He gave me a Gibson SG on the weekend.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Now, if that doesn't say rock and roll, here we come at, and this is kind of he's not the best at keeping secrets. It was actually supposed to be for my 60th birthday, which is months away. But I just thought, God, I'm a 60-year-old woman who's just been given a Gibson SG. I better get it together and get my rock band a pounding, right? Like who does that? Who gives a 60-year-old woman a Gibson SG? It really sent my head. Like, this was just totally out of the blue. But good call. Like, that's a mean guitar. Anyway, you get the gist of of having a place. Like, I'm looking at a place right now in Quesnel, actually, which is no place I want to live in particular. So it's a little city with a high rate of crime, evidently, I find out. Probably no higher than east end of Vancouver, where I currently reside. But I could buy this building
There you
and
go.
go and be there and just commit to, but I don't want to leave Vancouver. It's nuts. Dave's here. I still got my dad here. I'm, keeping an eye on and avoiding phone calls from.
Well, look, I'm gonna play another track, and so we'll take a little break. And
No.
Yeah, we'll be back in 3 minutes.
I'm on a roll, Vince.
Yeah, well, we'll get you rolling again.
All right.
You'll be okay. Okay. This is a revival of Cruelty from 1996.
Half hostage, half victim, like real shifts around. That is our closing up and drawing in. The spectacle is the reward. In a chaotic cycle, the universe begins. A crowd that's out of ringside, calling for the revival of cruelty. Calling out for more. When a direction's taken, it starts justifying itself, beginning by poser. A dismissal on all that's unexplored. All that's unexplored. Direction becomes a window. The setting dark of night. We are peering in. We are gazing out. We are gazing. We are gazing out. And the crowd calls out for more. Calling for the revival of cruelty. The revival of cruelty. The revival
Ring, 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 ring. Hello?
Oh my god, guess what's happening April 25th to May 5th?
What?
Our favorite radical community radio station, CKUT, is running its funding drive.
Oh, yeah. I heard they're reaching for 50 grand.
Yeah, so everyone needs to dig deep into their denim.
Can I donate online?
Darling, you can phone in, go online, show up at the station, or at one of their fundraising events to donate.
But what do I get out of that?
There's books, records, show tickets, CKUT swag, and you get to feel good about supporting your favorite show.
So when is it again?
All right, April 25th to May 5th. The theme is the next 30 years of CKUT. Hashtag 30 years forward. Go to funding.ckut.ca. Got it?
Got it.
Later, babes.
Later.
Wanna give love to CKUT. Wanna give love to CKUT.
Call Munity proudly presents the second annual Call Munity Music Week, featuring Smith & Wesson, Mumu Fresh, Lady Alma, Micah Shamaya, Larnell Lewis, Rich Brown, Dwayne Morgan, Motion, Spec One, Travis Knight, Keisha Fresh, Sadina, Asadanaki Whaler, and many more. Canada's first Black Arts and Music Week goes down from April 28th through May 5th at Residence Cafe, Salon Raphael, and Petit Campus. Visit callmunity.com for info, calendar, and tickets. If you love jazz, hip-hop, spoken word, reggae, Afrobeat, funk, house, soul, dance, or black art, then you can't afford to miss the second annual Call Munity Music Week, April 28th to May 5th in the gorgeous city of Montreal. It's your homeboy Preach in the building, and this is a CKUT co-presentation.
You're tuned to CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal. This is the Kitchen Bang Bang Law, and this is the Funding Drive edition. So the number to call, 514-907-9424. If you're hearing something you like or if you're hearing something you hate, call us anyway and pledge. I should mention, because you were just talking about getting a guitar, Gene, that I'm giving away musical instruments as gifts to people who pledge on my show.
I saw that.
So there's a Hondo guitar, which apparently the Beastie Boys employed the Hondo guitar. But this particular Hondo guitar actually used to belong to Chris Magone, who is a long-standing CKUTer. And I scavenged it when he tossed it out. When he was moving out of his apartment, I scavenged it. And I got it fixed up so it works. I've used it on my recordings. I've even performed live with it. And I'm not like normally a musician. Also a keyboard, a Yamaha keyboard, and a nice little guitar, like a practice amp, a guitar amp. If you go to my blog, which is eliminablerealityrec.com, it's just spelt the way it sounds, and you just click on there and look for the funding drive information, or go through the CKUT website, because they've got a link to my blog post there for all the cool gifts that I'm offering to people who pledge on my show.
Incredible.
Gene, I'm amazed by your painting career. I've watched it unfold on Facebook because we've been,
and that's been part of it too. It's kind of must be an entirely new way to interact with viewers, because it's almost sequential art.
Yeah.
And one of the interesting things about it is that, it's not that I'm influenced by people's opinions of, what they like, and then I do another one to appeal to, what has sold before, because, my long history with Mecca Normal, like we certainly don't do anything like that, like try to appeal to people. Normal aesthetic is with self-portraits when I was 3.
Yeah.
I was an advertising agency art director and a painter. Neither of my parents did portraits, but they were both painters. And I grew up in this incredible home in North Vancouver, an architecturally designed home by a guy named Fred Hollingsworth. It's like a West Coast modern home, a flat roof building after the great architect Frank Lloyd Wright. In fact, this guy Hollingsworth was a student of Wright's. So I grew up in this, it's not a big house, but it was an amazingly beautiful home, and both my parents being painters. My mom graduated from the Vancouver School of Art, and she was born in 1920, so around that time. And anyway, it was very vital and a lot of energy, explosive and passionate, and jazz was playing constantly on the hi-fi, and I was in my room, frequently grounded, painting my face, and I've always attempted to do at least one self-portrait a year. But at the point where I was working at the Home Depot Garden Center several years ago, and not liking hauling water and the crazy hours at 5 in the morning, which was my writing time, 7 days a week, 4-hour shifts. It was ridiculous, all set up for you by a computer, and no one gives a shit what's happening to your life. And I just thought, why don't I paint a painting a day and sell it on Facebook for $100 US, which is totally cheap. It's like it's a cheap price, but it also makes it, within the reach of people who maybe don't buy art, don't get a chance to buy art, and I happen to be good, so they're getting some quality art by somebody who is now creating a life-based, making a living, attempting to make a living. So I've got a lot of support in that way. And initially, like in the first year or so, I was getting people, like a art critic from Art Forum bought one, and instructors from the big art schools, the Chicago Institute of Art and Pratt, and it was kind of bizarre. Like I was getting really good feedback, and I've now had many return customers, and overall I've sold 700 of these 11 by 14 faces, which after about 10 years of writing novels, I think I've got about 4 novels ready to go, and I've got a literary agent who's very dedicated to finding the right place for them, but I've just kind of turn to painting because it's working.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think all of that defining of characters in words, which is actually a very tricky thing, because once you get them going, you have to make them behave through all of these scenarios, as you know, Vince, as a writer,
Sure.
where you can't keep saying, yes, they were charming. You have to then demonstrate them being charming, and if you've said they're devious, they have to now be a little devious, and this has to create the plot through their behaviors in the types of novels I write.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty intense work, I find. And I think that comes into the faces that I paint, that these are, I'm not into creating a likeness of specific people. I don't have a big interest. I've done a little bit of it, but I find it quite tedious and not really what I want to be doing.
Right.
So these faces are, I know when they're finished. I know when they're right as far as technique and color and composition and intensity, but mostly they're paintings of emotions, and they're almost all women. And they're emotions that are maybe a combination of how they're being seen, but also very visible are the emotions that they're maybe hiding or that they have that are maybe more under the surface. So in that way, as far as how women have been regarded in recent society, I guess back to, as far as the Egyptians anyway, that our faces are who we are a lot of the time. And when you're inside that face and not seeing that face, but you can feel your face revealing things or not revealing things, there's a lot going on with women's faces.
Right, right.
So that's what I'm painting. And I don't feel any great urge to write a big long artist statement about it. I'm just too busy painting and selling these things.
Well, it's extraordinary, because before that, like, you had a pretty regular gig for a long time working at a fitness center.
I worked at Curves for like about 5 years, several of those, and that was actually good because I was writing the novels,
yeah.
So I could go. And what those gyms were, it's a circuit for women in my kind of age bracket, as it turned out. And they were women who didn't maybe typically exercise a whole bunch. So I was encouraging them, because I've been a lifelong weightlifter, at least since I was 20 or so. So fitness was my thing, and to keep happy and agile and everything else. But they want somebody there to encourage them, but they also want somebody there to talk to and to listen to while they exercise, right?
Right.
So that was part of that gig, was sort of being like the activities manager. So I could tell them about different songs I was working on and get feedback. And the writing I was doing, I could run a scenario by them, and they would have an enthusiastic reaction, which you don't always get as a novelist, for sure. You're in isolation, and
sure, yeah.
No one necessarily wants to hear about it. Well, here was another kind of captive audience, which is always good. So they're doing their 30-minute workout. And I also got a stint with a whole bunch of social workers at one of these, the Curves on East Hastings there.
Oh, yeah.
And I was studying narcissism pretty closely at that time while I was doing online dating, and those two are not unrelated. And so I was able to get a lot of really great, official information on narcissism that was handed to me during those workout sessions. So the woman would be on the, whatever machine, the bicep, tricep. Yeah, well, gee, narcissism is it's like a wiring short circuit in the brain, and their brains are really wired. They're probably traumatized as a child, and they're extremely selfish. Sort of workout. They're sort of half therapy, half educational seminar. Anyway, yeah, so that was a good gig.
That's a great way to workshop your novels.
Yeah, so I was very pleased with how that was all going. And I do have a novel about a woman, an art gallery curator who cures narcissism, and the person that had the narcissism was a painter, an abstract painter, who was working on paintings that they were radical social paintings about the coal mining over on Vancouver Island. around Courtney, Cumberland, which is actually where Dave is going to reveal a mural about Ginger Goodwin and the labor history over in that. Dave's surprised I even know the name Ginger Goodwin. I know him so well. He's going, good one, Jean. You didn't muff that one up. Anyway, so, I've got that novel. It's quite vital when I think about, developing this character, the man who's a painter and a narcissist, and the curator, and she's kind of connected to him in this way, but they have... Anyway, so a lot of these social theories and psychological intel that I've gleaned have wound up in the novels, but now they seem to be appearing in paint, which is very gratifying.
So then after Curves, you started having some jobs that weren't so great. They were more like retail jobs. And, I
remember
you struggled with a few of those.
I worked at a store. I wrote fairly frequently about that. It was a food store of a kind of a gourmet level of food, and I do believe the owner there may have had, I'll say that for legal reasons, may have had narcissistic tendencies. And as people who have had experience with narcissism in their lives, me being one of them, we do find ourselves over and over again engaged with these people, whether it's a romantic partner or a boss.
Right.
We find these situations somehow, not magically, but through wanting, through the familiarity or other deeper reasons. So,
right.
That's when I started getting migraines. So I kind of had to wrap it up with the narcissist. I had to figure out distance and boundaries and all sorts of things.
Well, it seemed to me, just following you on Facebook, that one day you just sort of went, enough of this, I'm going to paint.
Exactly, and I wrote it as I thought it. I just said, I'm going to, and I think I stuck around Home Depot like a week or two afterwards, and then I remember I posted the letter when I resigned. I just said I won't. I was part-time, whatever, but I did resign officially, and I had a pretty good rapport with the guy who was whatever HR guy, and he said, well, this isn't good. What's happened? Why are you doing this? So I took the opportunity to write out, my band history and my social beliefs and my feminist ideas, and that I was now painting and making a living, and that's what I was going to do. And then, dead silence, because that's all completely insane. You were the lady in the orange apron with the big button, Gee, I'm new. With work gloves and 2 watering cans, looking really pissed off.
So you've been making a living from the paintings since then, since you quit that job.
I quit as soon as it seemed like the paintings, were viable. And Dave will tell you, it's been a roller coaster. I do kind of chronicle it by month. I consider it, obviously, I'm a worker.
You do a statistical breakdown.
And it's a monthly endeavor. So my bills are monthly. And so I aim to make enough to pay my bills. And, there have been months when I sold 9. Christmas has never been great because, people in our, friend range are not buying $100 gifts for people. And they're also maybe more personal. But I did have gift certificates. I think I only sold 1 of them. But, it's kind of fun having one's own little entrepreneurial empire and doing promotion online and making videos periodically. I want to get more into that. So it utilizes a lot of the skills that we have, built up, photography, and I've only done a couple of interviews, and I've recently fired out some to some top level galleries in New York. But none of these places are really looking. I think they're all just kind of trying to keep their doors open, really. And I'm not so sure I want to be in that world anyway. And I've heard, in fact, from art world artists that it would be very unlikely for a woman at my point in life, almost 60, to be included in that world. It's not really how it goes, right? And probably the same for the record industry.
Well, I would argue that if suddenly, Vogue France or something did a piece on you, you'd be surprised at how fast they'd glom onto you, right?
That's really weird because yesterday morning I got a an email from Vogue Britain.
Oh, yeah. Well, you should definitely
wanted to include me in what do they call them, an advertorial.
An advertorial.
And I thought, I feel like writing back. So why don't you hire somebody who knows something about art and get back to me, when you want to do a proper feature? Because I looked at some. I mean, I'm pretty there's a lot of horrible artwork out there. I'm sorry. It's nice that people are enjoying doing it, and this is very therapeutic. I was saying to Dave during the break, should we be sending you a check for this session of therapy we're getting here? Oh my goodness! But yeah. I mean, I'll do something at the time when it's right. But actually, as you know, I've been dealing with getting both parents moved, very elderly parents. It turned out to be a complete gong show, but they lived in a mobile home out in the valley here, very old, too old really to be there, and getting them into assisted living here. And my mom had a fall and was in. Anyway, you've seen it all, Vince. You know the tale of woe, right?
Yeah, a lot
and I took it to be a challenge, to not let any of this affect me. And in fact, I think it affected me positively as a painter. Dave and I very frequently rally and rise to the most unlikely occasions, right? We're good for that. We've given very good shows to audiences of 2 and less over the year. We're kind of at our best when there's 1.5 people there. Get right up in their grill. And they're practically crying, and they're nailed to the floor. They don't know what to do. I'm screaming in their face. But I feel like with the painting going, and as it turned out, it was great because I could be here as necessary and get my dad integrated into how to use Handy Dart, our disabled people's transport, to go and see my mom in the hospital. And
right.
I moved them, and Dave's signed because he's held my hand through this entire. It's been a horrible 2 years, really, and he's kept me together so many times philosophically, and geez, what a great friend on top of everything else. Just I really lucked out with Bacon Dave Lester, my friend. Holy cow. But I feel so much happier, just recently, which again, being given this FG by my other pal Dwayne, who also has been he knows my parents.
Yeah.
He knows what I'm up against dealing with them. And so the guitar again is symbolic of coming out the other side of this and creating, boundaries with my dad, who is now in this place alone. My mom died back in September. She was 98, and he might be kicking and screaming, for the duration. But I got to live my life, right?
Sure.
He's safe. He's fine, and all of this stuff is what people in our age bracket are having to contend with, or they see coming up, right?
Right.
I really worried about how to get through this whole time. Well, it was weirder than I thought, and took a real toll on my mental stability, and I wondered if I'd ever kind of get back to being confident, and I feel it all coming back now, thanks to good friends and art. Keeping myself together by painting every day vigorously, almost every day.
You must be seeing your practice, your painting practice, evolving too, from the time that you started. Because when you're doing something that intensively, every day, you just start to discover whole universes in your work, I would imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. And, for musicians, it is that sense, too. It's the same with guitar, because I play mainly with Dwayne, and he comes down out of where he works up north, every 6 weeks. He's here for two weeks, and we get together a couple of times. But we tend to, and this has been going on over 20 years. So we play, and it's almost, with me, I find that if I do the emotional, psychological work on myself, it is reflected in the quality of the artwork that I create, including the guitar. I don't necessarily have to play the guitar in order to get way better.
Right.
I don't know if other people similar to me have that experience. I mean, it sounds kind of crazy, but it's because I'm playing with Dwayne, who knows where I'm at with my, what's going on in my life, and we talk, and the same with Dave. We always have long talks about maybe more, what is going on that needs to be addressed, and he's the person who really brought feminism to me through music, like we mentioned a long time ago, it seems, at 9 a.m. this morning, our time, like the Slits and the Raincoats and the English bands, because he had lived in England with a feminist musician back before I met him, and seen some of these bands and been made aware. And he was into feminism probably, when feminism, third wave, second wave started. That's just his orientation, having his brother be an activist, an older person, bringing things into his awareness, into Dave's awareness. So back to the painting that, I see. I mean, other people's idea of it's getting better. I sometimes notice that with the people on Facebook, they might see one that's more realistic, and to them that's a good one. Or if the lady is prettier, let's face it, more beautiful, those are popular, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's okay, but I'm not just going to do realism. I'm not aiming to do realism or pretty people. That's it's sort of accidental in a way that they're pretty.
Right. You're working on like different techniques and so on as you're painting. You're not thinking about...
Yeah, or I'll return to ones, or I try to get all my favorite current ones. It's like having a bunch of really good riffs that you don't want to have all your good riffs in one song. or I might particularly be enjoying a color that I have a pretty limited palette, but maybe I'll introduce a particular color that I was attracted to, like a green. So I'll be mixing green and red, which can create some diabolical results. And I sometimes think, I used to drink and run around like a maniac, and now I get my jollies, mixing green and red. And that's pretty good. That's a good trick if you can get your life down to that, right?
I'd say, yeah. I was wondering if you dream about painting now, like because you paint so much every day.
I certainly was for a period of time. I wasn't so much dream, but that pre-dream sequence.
Right.
Where I'd almost want to just jump out of bed again, although I do like painting in natural light, so I wouldn't, but I'd lay down and I'd go, oh, God, that's incredible. I got to jump up and do that. And I go, no, actually I need to get some sleep, and I'll probably remember this in the morning. But it's kind of a neat added dimension to the painting, like I'm seeing this visceral sense of color and technique swirling around. I think, wow. Okay. I blew it with not doing that today.
I just thought of some practical things to ask you guys.
Yeah.
Can you tell me where people can find the album that we've been talking about, the Mecca Normal live record, and B, the Winnipeg General Strike graphic novel, and C, where can people hook up with you and your paintings?
Well, for me, my paintings, Gene Smith, I think it's 1806 on Facebook, just my regular page, not my painter page, which those pages on Facebook, I don't know, they seem deader than a doornail, if you ask me. So this is just my regular page, or if you're not on Facebook, you can find me on a WordPress site, and I update that. I have all these files, like April, and currently available this year, currently available last year. There's about 300 available right now, and as we said, I paint new paintings all the time, so that's where I am there, and thank you for running that by people. And just email me if you see one you want, and pay by PayPal, 130 Canadian, and ship them out with a layer of gloss, kind of a protective layer. So I like the idea of leaning them on a shelf, or not necessarily that they have to be framed, because that's the whole racket right there, as far as I'm concerned. So they're durable. You can just wipe them off. They don't need to be under glass. And as far as the album goes, I would say go to Bandcamp for that. The digital versions, both the CD and the online digital versions, have a lot more songs, which are all listed there on the Bandcamp page. And the LP, I guess we actually looked for the store in Montreal. I don't think we came to any conclusions as to who has it there.
But I'm sure if you go to an indie store in Montreal, they would order it.
That's right. And I think we were looking pre-release anyway, so that was kind of hopeless.
Right.
But, it should be available pretty readily, if not in person. When you go to the store, they, as you say, they can order it. So there's options there. And, I wanted to say, too, about Dave's graphic novel. He did the 1919, the Winnipeg General Strike. He was doing some tabling at a high school here recently, as part of that graphic history collective, which he's worked with before, and I really like this, is him talking about working with people too, because as a person who draws, obviously he's in solitude over there, so it does kind of it's a good environment to have other people, the academics who are creating the scripts, and I guess they share the tabling. So he was at an event where high school history teachers all came in, and we're looking for material for their upcoming classes. I didn't realize they had that kind of liberty, but maybe it would be department heads or whatever, regionally or provincially, not sure. But anyway, the upshot of it was, for Dave sitting there, meeting these people and talking about the books, was he learned, and I guess it's no surprise, but high school kids are pretty into these, they're like sound bites, really, and with the graphic information, a lot can be put into their short attention span that they supposedly have. It was very encouraging to hear the reaction in that way from these high school teachers. I mean, discouraging in a way for people who write long form anything. Mm-hmm. But he is on trend, we'll say. He's totally lit, as the kids were saying maybe 3 years ago. But that's where I am with lingo. And as far as where are people buying the book, Dave?
Well, it's published by Between the Lines, a publisher in Ontario. So if you go to their website, if you just type in Between the Lines and maybe put in 1919, it should pop up. I mean, it's obviously on Amazon as well.
And AK has it.
And AK Press has it in the U.S. They're distributing it. So you just go there and type in 1919, graphic history of the Winnipeg General Strike, and there it should pop up.
This kind of reminds me of how important it used to be when you were on radio to give these details very precisely, where things are, but now you realize people just go and buy it wherever they can find it in 2 seconds.
And they can search very quickly on the internet. So. What else?
I wanted to thank you very much for having us. I feel honored that we're on your very last show, Vince. This is kind of it's a milestone for you, and I'm really happy to be part of it.
Well, I was saving you guys because I knew you had the album out, and I
it means a lot to us for sure, just to connect with you again and wish you well in your new life in Winnipeg. Hopefully, you're going to be on the radio there.
Well, we'll see. What I'm going to do is I'm going to slide into town secretly. And,
sorry.
And then I will listen to the. I'll listen to the stations and see what I think. Do I want to do a show on these?
Yeah. Well,
that sort of thing.
We've had a good experience there. We played live, and Dave did a long interview for his graphic novel. Mm-hmm. Very nice people, very serious, accommodating. We had a really good feeling about what was the university?
I think it was U of Winnipeg, I think.
Yeah. U of Winnipeg, yeah, because there's 2 stations there.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
Be the University of Manitoba, I guess, as well. Or
yeah, so it'll be interesting to see. I'm curious because I haven't done a lot of travel myself in the last while, and curious to see different station cultures and see what they sound like.
Yeah,
I mean, for one thing, CKUT people aren't afraid of pushing the boundaries musically or otherwise, and I'm curious to see if there's more reticence because when they have a student strike here for the environment, 150,000 people turns out. So that doesn't seem to happen in a lot of other Canadian cities, and I'm curious about what it is about the rest of Canada that's so reticent about these things.
Well, think of all the great fuel you can bring to Winnipeg with all your years of history.
Well, that's all I'm bringing with me is like
and
lots.
lighting the fire under the people of Winnipeg.
I'm bringing lots of fuel. So
now, are you going to be there when Dave is there?
No, I'm not. I'm gonna be getting there in early June. So I'll have missed Dave's appearance. But where are you going to be, Dave? Are you going to be like doing a public thing, a talking thing?
Well, there's I think it's a 5-day conference devoted to the 100th anniversary of the Winnipeg General Strike, and it all takes place at the University of Winnipeg, and so there'll be all these academics and union people and social justice people talking about why the Winnipeg General Strike matters today. And so I'm part of a panel that will be there with the Graphic History Collective, and we'll also be having a launch of the book at McNally Robinson bookstore, and I think there's maybe a couple of other events that I'll be a part of while I'm there.
All right, so people in Winnipeg can. Well, if we have listeners in Winnipeg, it's quite possible with the internet. So.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. We think of Montreal, and we've come into CKUT and always found we've been on charts over the years, and it's always a real thrill. It's always to be in Montreal, have our stuff played in Montreal, and the number of times, not that many that we've made our way out there, but man, the first time we did, I feel like we just kind of weren't in the right time, right place for Vancouver. But the 2 nights we played our first time out there in 1986, we got 2 sold-out nights and standing ovations.
Wow.
It was just I was in a dream world. It was just bizarre.
Yeah,
the reaction was, hey, touring is for us, and this is a great city, and, just so vital and welcoming and yet intense in so many ways.
Well, it's certainly the case right up to the present moment. It has a very vital live scene here.
Yeah.
So yeah. Well, I want to thank you too, and I guess I will let you slowly fade away.
Goodbye.
Because I've got to end the show in about 8 minutes or so.
Oh well, this was a real thrill. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks, Vince, and again, congratulations and for all of the work that you've done.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you for the work that you're continuing to do.
Hooray!
Good luck with all your endeavors.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
I'm gonna leave with a track from the album, but this is a live track from 1993.
Oh.
I'm gonna play "Hideous."
Wow.
Well, I quite enjoyed these tracks. These were tracks that you guys basically improvised in the studio, I think.
Yeah, never before heard.
Yeah, they were previously unreleased. So again, thanks for being on the show.
Take care.
See ya.
Take care. Bye.
Burning tight. Sat around the It's hideous. It's hideous. There now, watch it grow. Watch it center of the flame. It's hideous. It's slow. It's here now. Watch it.
You're tuned to CKUT. This is the Kitchen Bang Bang Law, and it's the waiting moments of my funding drive show. This is also the last show I'll be doing at CKUT as I'm moving west. So don't forget to dial 514-907-9424. That's the number for the phone room upstairs. If you wanted to pledge on this show or any show at CKUT, we're not proprietary about who you pledge for. But don't forget, with my show, there's a whole bunch of gifts waiting for your connoisseurship. I'm going to play one more Mecca Normal track to take us to the top of the hour. This is called Alibi. And thanks, everyone, for listening. See you when I see you.
Talking to you.